after 1,000 years in hiding, the Sith made a dramatic return. In a few short years, they eliminated their historic enemies and had taken near full control over the galaxy. This success is rightfully prescribed to Palpatine and his master Darth Plagueis. However, others also assume that Darth Bane, the founder of the Rule of Two, had a part to play in formulating the Sith plan and Order 66. However, this is not really the case. In this video, we will discuss the Sith Grand Plan in depth and explore how different Sith had their own, largely unsuccessful ideas of how to rid the Jedi and the Republic from the galaxy. And, in my opinion, many of them were much more interesting and imaginative than Order 66. So what actually was the Sith Grand Plan, and how did it differ from the Sith's previous iterations? Darth Bane advocated for a more insidious version of the Sith, whereby they would undermine the Republic's institutions from within. However, the idea of the clone army in Order 66 was cooked up 1,000 years later by Darth Plagueis and Palpatine, not at all by Darth Bane. As I have explained in previous videos, I'm not a massive fan of the Rule of Two. In fact, I think it was probably worse than what preceded it. They just got incredibly lucky to have a Sith as competent as Palpatine to finally enact their end goal. If you want to find out my full reasoning on that topic, then make sure to check out this video linked here. So what other plans did the Sith have to destroy the Republic before they came up with Order 66? Well, Darth Bane and many of the Sith after him had no concrete plan to destroy the Republic or take down the Jedi. Bane realized that any plan that would be successful would take many lifetimes to achieve. He believed that the Sith would have to spend many centuries planning and strengthening themselves in order to actually achieve this goal. However, for many centuries, this seemed to be a complete failure. For example, Darth Gravid destroyed much of the Sith's knowledge when he fell to the light side of the Force. If it was not for his apprentice, the Sith likely would have ended there. Regardless, this event set the Sith back many centuries, and some very powerful Force techniques were lost forever. Other Sith like Darth Vectivus were more interested in business. Vectivus was famous for treating his workers very well and died peacefully surrounded by his loved ones, which isn't at all very Sith-like. However, despite these setbacks, slowly but surely the Sith grew in influence and power. And around 800 years after Darth Bane had transformed the Sith, they finally began plotting to take over the galaxy. In fact, the Sith's power had grown to such an extent that the Jedi could begin to feel their presence. Of course, the Jedi could not have known that it was their ancient enemies, the Sith, but they were well aware that the Force was being warped and shifted towards the dark side. The first known plot to destroy the Jedi was enacted by Darth Tenebrus and his Twi'lek master. Like his future apprentice Darth Plagueis, Tenebrus was a true evil genius. He believed that the Force was something that could be studied and understood, and therefore bent to his will. Tenebrus and his master tried for many years to create a virus with very unique and powerful properties. Through the use of dark-side alchemy, they hoped that this virus could spread and strip the Jedi of the Force itself. But this plan ultimately failed. Nevertheless, it did inspire Tenebrus to enact his own version of this more scientific version of the Sith Grand Plan. Tenebrus's plans would require a lot of capital and connections, so he therefore decided to design and sell starships to Coruscant's elite. Not only did this make him incredibly wealthy, it also made him very well connected among the economic and political rulers of the Republic. No doubt, these relationships would have played an important role in implementing his crazy Sith Grand Plan if he lived long enough to actually enact it. So, what was Tenebrus's Grand Plan? In short, he was a bit like Syndrome from The Incredibles. He believed that he would be able to bestow the people of the galaxy many wonders using Force-powered technology. If successful, every person in the galaxy would have exceeded the powers and abilities of the Jedi. Therefore, the Jedi would die out as there simply would be no need for them.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
And most crucially of all, the Sith would control this technology, and therefore, the galaxy. I've seen other excellent Star Wars YouTubers such as Geetsley describe this Sith Grand Plan as unlike anything else seen through the long history of the Sith. I, however, will politely disagree. The original Dark Jedi who founded the Sith had a similar vision, although it differed in some key aspects. Sith, such as Ajunta Paul and Karnas Mur, were originally Jedi that believed that the Jedi did not do enough to help the galaxy. They saw the suffering and death throughout the galaxy, and believed that the Jedi should use forbidden force techniques, dark side alchemy, and technology to make the galaxy a better place. Arguably, the Jedi Council saw this as a threat to their power which would make them obsolete, and so the Second Jedi Schism was started. If you want to find out more about these Sith origins, then check out this video. Tenebrus' plan was similar in many ways. Force-powered technology could increase crop yields, kill big scary monsters, and even eliminate disease and death. However, unlike the ancient Dark Jedi, Tenebrus saw the Force's precognitive abilities as its main use. In his rather secular view of the Force, he believed that this power could be harnessed through the use of giant supercomputers and other technological miracles. Then, through the use of his political and economic connections, he could help the Republic's government perfectly plan out trade routes, resource distribution, and political governance. Theoretically, the government would know everything about everyone, even their future. This degree of control would allow for a utopia without suffering and war, therefore negating the role of the Jedi. But simultaneously, there would also be no freedom, as everything would be predicted and controlled by this force-powered technology, which would secretly be controlled by the Sith. Whether or not this actually would have worked is up to debate. Tenebrus tried to use a kind of force-powered precognitive technology known as maxichlorians to cheat death. This ended very badly for him, and his soul ended up trapped for eternity inside his own dead body. I'll do a video on that at some point in the future, but in short, his efforts to use the Force as a tool backfired massively. There's a strong possibility the same could have happened with his own Sith Grand Plan. The final Grand Sith plan we will discuss today is very similar to Order 66. In a sense, it was the first draft of the plan which would ultimately become Order 66. Every Star Wars fan knows how Palpatine and Plagueis used their political and economic connections to rise through the ranks of the Republic whilst also manipulating the Jedi Cypher DS into creating an army of human clones on Kamino. But the original version of this plan was going to be quite different, and may have actually seen the CIS wipe out the Jedi. Plagueis originally wanted to clone an army of inturi. This aggressive species had recently been admitted into the Republic, and held several traits that made them very useful against Jedi. First, they were very resistant to pain and heat, while also being exceptionally strong. They were also resistant to force-based attacks, most notably Jedi mind tricks. They were also innovative when it came to technology, and famously brandished lightsaber-resistant Cortosis swords and shields during the Sith-provoked Inturi Uprising, an event that killed many Jedi. Simultaneously, Plagueis and Palpatine had been undermining relationships between the core and the Rim, which we know eventually resulted in the Separatist Alliance. Plagueis' original plan was to arm the Separatists with a clone army of Inturi. Perhaps they would have even fought alongside the droid army against the Republic. And without the clone army coming to the rescue on Geonosis, it very well may have led to the Sith-led Separatists actually defeating the Jedi and the Republic. However, there were several major flaws in this grand plan. First, it wasn't a given that the Separatists would actually be able to defeat the Republic. Although the Jedi would have their hands full fighting both the Inturi and droid armies without the backup of the clones, it likely would have rallied many worlds into enacting conscription. It is worth remembering that the Republic core was the industrial center of the Republic, and many quadrillions of people lived there. If the Republic and Jedi had mobilized quickly, the Separatists could have still lost the war. And even worse for the Sith, the Jedi would have been seen as heroes within the human-dominated core, as they would have been seen defending the galaxy from evil enemy alien clones and droids. This had happened many times before in the days of the Old Republic. The Sith would invade with an army of bounty hunters, droids, aliens, or Sith spawn, and cause mass devastation. But then, occupied worlds would rise up and join the ranks of the Republic and Jedi, ultimately leading to a Sith defeat. There is no reason to believe that Plagueis and Palpatine would have been successful where many other Sith had failed so miserably. The second issue with this plan was the Inturi themselves. Yes, they were powerful and a threat to the Jedi. But these same attributes also made them a threat to the Sith. This was only made worse by the fact that they were much harder to engineer during the cloning process to make them more compliant. The Kaminoans and Sith feared that an army of them could go rogue, and so the plan was scrapped. Instead, Palpatine suggested that an army that fought for the Republic would be much more effective. The creation of the GAR would allow the Sith to eliminate the Jedi using Order 66, while also tricking the masses into embracing the new Sith-run empire. And so, the first successful Sith grand plan was born. If you would like to learn more about the Sith, then check out this Origins of the Sith video here. Or if you want to learn why I think the rule of 2 is really dumb, then check out this video.